Hello, I'm Alexandra Sleator, Career Accelerator. And what that means is that working together, you'll get to achieve your career objectives faster than you would on your own. Together, we can tackle a wide range of career challenges. Of course, we can help you progress your career. And that can mean articulating a strategy so you can grab that promotion that you so richly deserve. But it could also mean repackaging your skills so that you can make a bid for a role that's quite different from the one you have now and progress your career in a different way. We can help you with your career right here, right now, to make it more comfortable, to position you well for the future by helping you refine such core skills in the office as communication, influence, conflict management, but also if you're a line manager, team motivation, leadership presence, but also other challenges like personal effectiveness or presenting with confidence. Last, but by no means least, we can help you with a career transition, whether that means a return to the workforce after you've been on a break, or whether that means redefining success, identifying a really different job, even possibly a completely new sector of activity for you to move your career to. The point is that working together, we will ensure that we work in a time and cost-efficient way so that you realize your career aspirations. So welcome to the third edition for 2014 of Career Tips. In the previous offerings, we looked at goal setting for your work objectives in 2014 and how to really frame those goals so that they really motivate you. Then we looked at blind spots, how we can get in our own way and not be aware of it and slow ourselves down on the way to our objectives. So hopefully, having dealt with our blind spots, we are now ready to make good progress on our work objectives. We're now in the third month of the year, and for many of you, there is a mid-year review coming up in June. So this edition is dedicated to effective working habits. Now, effective working habits, personal effectiveness type of topics are not new, and for those of you who are familiar with my work, you may already be aware of the material that I have put together in the past. For those of you who are curious about this material, the URL is now appearing on your screen that takes you to a series of articles and videos on time management. And so in this tutorial, I simply want to share with you 5 tips about what I consider to be really healthy habits in the office. So let's get cracking. Tip number 1, don't multitask. Now you're going to tell me, but hang on, I have so much to do in the office, I must multitask. Yes, but there's a way to do it right and a way to do it wrong. So let's do a simple exercise. And you may want to pause the video as we do the exercise just so you can do it. First of all, count to 10 out loud very fast. 1, 2, 3. Get cracking. Then do the same thing with the alphabet, going from A to J out loud as fast as you can. A, B, Z. And after you've done these 2 exercises, if you've timed yourself, you should find that it took you 2-3 seconds to run through each list, depending on how fast you can move your tongue. Now let's do a third one. Let's go A1, B2, C3, and so on and so forth until J10. Now you should find that this takes you much longer. Still, in the scheme of things, it doesn't take you that long. But still, it has required that your mind go to the number spot and then to the letter spot and bring them together. And that's why that third list took you longer. Because your brain doesn't multitask, it task switches. And so when it switches tasks, it has to defocus itself from one activity, refocus on another, and so on and so forth. And that simply takes a lot of brain power, which also means that multitasking is pretty brain intensive and brain tiring even. So in a world where we must attend to a multiplicity of tasks, the intelligent way to multitask is to have a sense of completing something around an activity, moving to another one, attending to it, may not necessarily be for long, but getting something sorted, addressed, attended to, and then moving on. So that indeed you attend to a variety of tasks, but not in this sort of zigzaggy, messy way that consumes too much brain power, can confuse you. And the technique that underlines that capacity to attend to an activity and then move consciously to another one is called chunking, and we'll talk a lot about chunking in the rest of this tutorial together. Now, not only is multitasking ineffective from a brain process point of view, but it's also risky, because when we juggle a lot of balls, the fact is that there is a risk that one could fall off. So there's also a risk of underperformance around multitasking, and not just of personal tiredness. So don't multitask. Now, tip number 2 is a suggestion around working with the end in mind. Now, this is me paraphrasing Stephen Covey in one of his 7 Habits of Effective People, whereby he recommends that we start with the end in mind. And here, working with the end in mind is really to remind ourselves that, after all, each workday should take us a little bit closer to achieving our work objectives. And sometimes we get derailed. And most of us get derailed because we're trying to be responsive to other people's needs. We answer people's emails, client queries, colleagues, phone calls. So yes, we're very responsive, very collaborative, and everybody would love us in the office. But have we really, as we responded to all of these requests, been working in a way that gets us closer to our work objectives? Have we really been working on activities that we will be thanked for come payday? Have we really been working on activities that we will be able to talk about with pride during the review processes, whether at the mid-year or at the end of the year? And for some of us, there is a risk there of slippage. So my advice is to really, as you come into the office, to ask yourself, I have a few activities planned for today. Are they getting me closer? And sometimes it's a little bit indirect, but it's still clear that it will contribute ultimately to getting you to your work objectives. And I want to really be strong here and advise that you spend 95% of your time working on things that have a link to your work objectives. Because at the end of the year, you will be thanked for your work objectives and not for anything else. So yes, you need to be responsive. And so that's why I leave 5 minutes for things that have nothing to do with your own work objectives. But try and not make it too much more. Now, tip number 3 is called the 18-minute technique. Now, what is that about? Well, my point is that it takes 18 minutes to effectively manage an 8-hour workday. How does that work? Well, start with a first block of 5 minutes in the morning, a first chunk. And in that 5 minutes, in line with what I just shared with you around working with the end in mind, take a look at your day and ask yourself, am I going to be spending my day on activities that get me closer to my work objectives, to achieving those? Plan, and we'll go into more detail in tip number 4 around planning. Organize your day so that you avoid the risk of this intense multitasking that I again talked at tip number 1, which is just another recipe for distraction. And then get going, and each hour, take a minute to regroup. So put a reminder somewhere, your iPhone, your calendar, Outlook, wherever, something that forces you to pause. Now you're going to say to me, well, that's a distraction potentially. Well, what I've found, and others who've used the technique agree, is that actually when you take a minute every hour, you will typically, frequently, be interrupting yourselves from a distraction. You've gone off plan, you've gone off piste, and having that minute to regroup shows you that you have allowed yourself to become distracted, that you're not really working on your activities as you had thought you would at the beginning of your day. And so that minute, yes, it distracts you, but it's a very healthy distraction because it allows you to regroup and to refocus, and it catches you quickly because it catches you on the hour, and so it means that the slippage hasn't gotten so bad that you can't hope to recover from it and the whole day is affected by it. So every hour, a minute to regroup. And then at the end of the day, a last chunk of 5 minutes to again take a look at the day just gone and say, did I work on the things I had planned to, and if not, what happened? What's the lesson I want to learn to work differently and more effectively tomorrow? Wrapping the day, maybe a last phone call, a last email, and looking forward to the next day and its activities. So that's the 18-minute technique. Tip number 4 is about practicing proactive calendarizing. And indeed, the main point here is to encourage you to control your diary rather than it controlling you. Of course, we all know, especially in big firms, but throughout the corporate world, all of us will be dragged into meetings where we're really unsure why we're here, and we have a sense that we're not really at the right place. So lots of inefficiencies and politics around us mean that we can't always be in control of the activities we do in the meetings we attend. So absolutely. But again, to the extent possible, try and control what makes it into your calendar. If you're a line manager who is bogged down in meetings, consider who among your team members you could send in your place. So there's ways to try and get rid of some of these time vampires that will literally suck the blood out of your day and leave you with very little time to actually work on what you want to be working. Now, every job is different and every job has its constraints. So again, I am not saying at all that this is easy. But those techniques hopefully help to shift you from being on the back foot to the front foot, where your workday is more what you say it should be about than before, and how you manage it is more around your choices than other people's. So when you practice calendarizing, indeed you try and control what goes into your diary rather than it really calling the shots for you. And also you plan, and this is where chunking comes again. Chunking does two things. It groups things together and it slices things. So at this phase, tip 4, I want to talk to you about chunking in terms of bringing things together. So for example, rather than answering any email as it comes in the inbox, going ping, ping, or any instant message on Reuters or Bloomberg or whichever platform, rather than picking up the phone whenever it rings, let all these things go. Let the email rest in the inbox, let the phone call go to the voicemail, and then, when you have planned, answer emails for 15 minutes, return phone calls for 15 minutes. So I'm not saying don't answer phone calls all day long, I'm not saying don't read your emails. Do it in chunks. Read your emails first thing in the morning for half an hour, then 3 hours later, 2 hours later, come back, do some more emails for 15 minutes, answering only those that you must answer, those that are really urgent and important. And for those of you who have looked at some of the previous material on effectiveness at work, you will be familiar with the priority matrix, which allows us to identify what is really urgent and important that we must attend to immediately. And if you haven't, again, you will find the priority matrix in the material that was referenced at the beginning of this tutorial. Plan also your breaks, because that's healthy. Plan a walk around the lunch hour if it's not raining for once. And as you planned, adhere to the end times of your plans. Now we all know that some firms have a culture of meetings running very late. And there you may be stuck, but if you know that, plan always a free half hour after these meetings that you know tend to run longer, so that you don't have a snowballing effect of being late for everything else in your day. Or plan to simply stand up and leave and say, I'm sorry, I have another meeting to go to, and therefore I must leave you even though the meeting is not finished. I had a manager who simply did that, and I started to do it myself. So to the extent possible and appropriate within the context of your role and of the organization you work for, there are ways to start sticking more to the end time of meetings. Now, clearly, if you're a manager who is calling and running meetings, you can be disciplined and you can end your meetings on time. But end anything else that you've planned on time. If you've given yourself a break, come back to your desk at the appointed time. If you've allowed yourself 15 minutes for emails, don't make it 20 minutes. And try as well not to return phone calls for too long. So really practice that discipline. Otherwise, things will continue to slip, and we will be in a Heathrow Airport situations where the 6 o'clock plane is really leaving at 7:30. So try and avoid the snowball effect by being on top of your calendar. Then last tip, it's around indeed chunking your time. And here we're looking at chunking in that other fashion. It's not chunking where we group things like emails, like returning phone calls. It's chunking in terms of slicing. And this is a way to be effective when we have a big thing to do, a big report that we need to write, a big presentation, or simply a project that requires a string of activities. Now, we chunk our time naturally anyway, but here, by being aware that we do chunk, that we do things in pieces, we can, through that awareness, be even more effective at it. So when it comes to a report, for example, block 20 minutes and make a go, and just tell yourself, during these 20 minutes I'm going to write the report outline. And then, plan in your diary another slot of 30 minutes to write a section that you know you have all the information about and you can really write it easily. And that's that piece done. Then there's another section where you have not completed all the underlying work. So allow yourself another 30 minutes or maybe even an hour to finish working on that section before you write it, and so on and so forth. Now, all of this is a lot about planning, it's a lot about being proactive. And for some of you, it will feel clunky at the beginning to think so much about what you have to do. But it's only if you take that proactive stance that you will manage your day in the office much more towards what you want it to be and what it needs to be, so that it gets you closer to achieving day by day your 2014 work objectives. So here you have it, 5 tips to avoid multitasking in the wrong way, even though we all must attend to a multiplicity of tasks at the office, to work with the end in mind, with that sense of purpose, to use the 18 minutes techniques to avoid slippage, to practice calendarizing so that again our day is more what we want it to be, rather than completely running late and being the headless chicken in the office, and using chunking to make steady progress when we have big activities to complete. I hope that this will provide you with food for thought and that you will at least try out one of these tips in the office this week and see whether it has an impact on your effectiveness. As usual, I'm very curious to hear about your techniques, so if you have some tips to share about how to work effectively in the office, please pop them in the box below. That would be super for everyone to share. If you'd like to engage with me on the topic of your effectiveness, you know where to find me. My email address is appearing on the screen right now. Thank you so much, as usual, for watching. I hope this was useful, and I'll look forward to seeing you very soon for another edition of Career Tips. In the meantime, best wishes and take very good care. Bye-bye.